Right, hi everyone, Michael here from Christ of England. Today's video I'm going to explain why your vote doesn't matter, the truth around who really controls the country and all our countries, and how we can overcome the problem. Now, after yesterday's voting in the UK, a lot of people are excited because Reform had a pretty good day, and to me it doesn't really matter because, as you see, voting is third in line of the power structure. Now let's get straight up to the top. At the top, who controls the country? Why does it seem that no matter when we vote, nothing ever changes? So for 40 years in the UK, people have voted against mass migration, and we've been ignored for 40 years. And that's because the people who control the country at this present time, and these sort of people have always controlled the country, is, we all know, it's the World Economic Forum, the central bankers, Qatar Investment Fund. They're a big backer in this country, or they've owned all this sort of, all the companies, and they have a lot of power. BlackRock, we all know BlackRock, and the Bill Gates Foundation, one of the richest men in the world. Now, these are the top dogs. You probably put the royal family in there as well, and maybe like the Catholic Church and the Church of England, but these are ultimately the main big dogs, and they're our ultimate enemy. They set the policies and control everything. We think, oh, we vote, we're going to make change, but that's going to do nothing. These are merely puppets of these two people. So it doesn't matter who you vote for the most part, they're not going to do anything. Unless the people you vote for are going to wage war against these, nothing is going to happen. So the second level we have is, I call them the smaller NGOs. So you've got like the Tony Blair Foundation, George Soros Open Society, we all know that. He may even be up there, to be fair. But then definitely down here is Black Lives Matter, Hope Not Hate, and Unite the Union. Whenever you saw those the Southport riots, after that, all the people that came out and all the people doing the Free Palestine with those banners, they're all like the Unite Unions. And these are all the ones who consolidate these guys' powers. So these guys will give, like the WEF control Tony Blair. You know, Bill Gates controls Tony Blair. And then they're the ones who are like, oh, we need to cause racial problems. Let's use BLM. And as I say, George Soros is probably up here. So George Soros loves using BLM. He probably funds Hope Not Hate and all that stuff. And we all know that our problem is globalism and leftism. That all comes from WEF, BlackRock, Bill Gates, and all that. And then the central bankers, they control the money. They're the main moneyed interests. And also, one thing people need to understand is, in this country, there's a massive rise of Islam. It's everywhere. And you're thinking, even I was trying to figure out, where is this coming from? It doesn't seem natural. Most Muslims coming here are leaving Islam because they realise it's a bit of a death cult. And then I started looking into it, and the Qatar Investment Fund are basically almost as big as BlackRock. They got investments in everything. And I reckon that they're the ones funding a lot of this Muslim propaganda. And they're probably involved with other countries, probably like Iran. And there's a guy from the UAE I follow, and he exposed it. It says like the Qatar Investment Fund. And some of these places are funding, like Islamic Relief in the UK. He says they're virtually a terrorist organisation, and they're being funded by a lot of these corrupt people. And in the UAE, a sensible Muslim country, in fairness to them, they've banned the likes of the Muslim Brotherhood, of Hamas. Whereas in the UK, I don't think he says we haven't even banned these terrorist organisations. And in many cases, Islamic Relief is based in Birmingham, I believe. They're being funded by a lot of Muslims in the UK and Qatar. And they're like, oh no, we're just here to help the Palestinian babies and do stuff. But really, they're probably funding terror. This is what the gentleman says on Twitter. So the massive rise of Islam, again, it's money. People are pushing it. The universities, I'm sure that the Qatar are probably funding a lot of students to come, and they want to take over because they want Islam to take over the world because it's their religion and that's what they believe. Now, let's get to the third point of what I'm saying about this is virtually a waste of time. I put Labour on the far left because they are essentially pretty much a communist party. The Tories are slightly to the right of them, and the Reform, as it is at the moment, they're a centrist party. And these have some impact, no doubt. And let's face it, Reform won yesterday, or they had a good day yesterday, not because people are overly enthused, I wouldn't say, but people were fed up with Labour. And Labour only won the last election because people were fed up with the Tories. So no one's voting out of a real belief in who they're voting for. It's to annoy the Tories, to annoy Labour. But Reform had promise, but Farage seemed to have been a backed down a bit. You know, he said, oh, well, we got to accept Islam's going to come into be a massive part of the country, and you know, I can't do mass migration. But then he changed his mind on the week of the election, funnily enough. But ultimately, there's only so much voting, there's only so much power these people have. And we think if we keep voting, we're going to make changes. It's a complete and utter waste of time. That's why I don't believe in voting anymore. I believe it's pretty much a waste of time. I would rather we put all our time, money and effort into this here. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll explain it to you. This is what I believe we should focus our time, money and efforts on. And this is how the system goes. Or the opposite system. What we're under now is the Father God, because God is above everything. Even though these people may be evil and corrupt and the system is stupid, God is above everything. And I put this as Antichrist system. Now, this is not the Christian version of Antichrist. The way I see Christ and the Antichrist, Christ represents the light of God and the love of God. And the Antichrist is just the opposite. It represents the darkness. Because in this physical world, you have to have opposites. We have day, night, we have hot, cold. And then you have Christ, and you have to have the opposite. So you have the Antichrist. So you have the Father, and then the Antichrist is represented by the system. And the system is run by the merchants, which is the main moneyed powers, the richest people, and the mercenaries. So like Tony Blair is a mercenary. And all these people putting refugees in hotels and taking the money, they're mercenaries. All the people like who get offered more money, like the golfers, they're playing in America for a couple million a year. They get offered 100 million a year to go to Saudi Arabia. They do it. And now, whilst I don't blame them, that's just a mercenary culture. There's no honour, there's no national duty, there's no duty to do what's right. It's just, you're a mercenary. You just take the money. And then below that is just the people. And the people will suffer because they're under a mercenary system. Whereas what we need is, we have the Father, then we have, instead of the Antichrist system, we have the Christ system. And that's what I want to do with the Christ of England. That's why it's Christ of England. So the Christ of England would rival all these ones, and we'd be the top dogs. And it would be run, instead of the merchants running society, you'd have the wise spiritual leaders. So wise spiritual leaders would look at this system and say, this is ridiculous, the people are going to suffer. Too much greed, too much corruption and mercenaries. We need to change the system. And then you'd say, well, how are you going to change it? You've got no chance against them. That's when you would have the warriors. So instead of the mercenaries, who are sellouts and going to chase the money, you have the warriors who are righteous and who are going to fight and listen to the instructions of the wise. And then obviously the people, instead of suffering under this system, they'll thrive and be happy under this system. Because you have wise people who are looking out for their souls and their happiness and family values and good traditional values, rather than this liberalism, money, merchant, mercenaries, everybody's a cog in a system. It's soulless and a system of death and darkness. And if you want an example of the wise and the warriors, think of Gladiator. You had Maximus Aurelius, the wise man, and Russell Crowe's character, Maximus, was the warrior. So the wise would lead society, and if you need problems, the warriors would go out. And if you want to look at Mike Tyson and Cus D'Amato, Mike Tyson was a warrior, Cus D'Amato was the wise. What happened when Cus D'Amato, the wise man, died? Mike Tyson turned into a mercenary because he was controlled by Don King, who was a merchant, who only cared about the money. Cus D'Amato loved Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson said at the time he knew that Cus loved him and he wanted to live moral and wise. But when the wise man died, he ended up going to the merchant, Don King, and then his life fell apart because he was just a merchant. He was a soulless cog in a machine. He was just chasing money. And he said he got miserable, violent, aggressive, got in trouble with the law because he didn't have the wisdom. He was just a slave under the merchant. Okay? So that's pretty much the point of my video. I want people to understand that voting is not really going to change. It may make a difference, but we need to start targeting the big dogs. And that's what the Christ of England is up here. We need to set something here, the Christ of England, a spiritual revolution to take down these people. And you're probably thinking, yeah, but they're too big. Who do you think you are? Well, Christ is the ultimate. If you have Christ, you can defeat it. It's like David v Goliath. That is the Goliath system. And we are David. The Christ of England can be David at this moment in time because we're small. But we have the stone to shoot at them. And that's an analogy for Christ. If you have Christ with you, you can defeat this evil system. So that's what I want Christ of England to be. Instead of wasting our time with politics, imagine if all the time, money and effort we put in, millions and millions and millions, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions, billions, into a spiritual movement to rival these and put pressure on these, and say to Bill Gates, who do you think you are? We ain't going along with it. To say to BlackRock, who do you think you are? We're not going along with your mess. Then we can make changes if we can replace these people and kick them out. And it is possible, because when the UK went to war, or when the Russia stuff kicked off, our government and establishment seized all the Russian people's assets. So why, if we don't grow, we can't put pressure and eventually seize their assets and kick them out? I don't see why it can't be done if we're talking 10, 20 years. And we can make the change, and we need to fight back, and we can't give up. And with Christ, with the Spirit, we can make positive change. And what can you do for now? For now, subscribe to the Christ of England and get our numbers up. We need to grow. We need to affect the culture. I want to get some famous people involved. Anybody who claims to be a Christian or loves Christ, they need to come and get involved and work with us. Instead of donating money to all these dodgy charities, donate it to the Christ of England. We need to get into the education system, the health system, or we need to rival them, create our own homeschooling systems, affect the culture, affect the music, get a youth movement going. There's loads of things we need to do. And that's what the Christ of England is about. And I don't think we should be wasting our time on politics. Okay, so I'm not going to go much more into this video. There's so much I can say. If you subscribe to the channel, as time goes on, you'll get what I'm saying. Okay, so for now, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like it, share it with as many English and even people around the world, because we all face the same problems all over Europe and the world. And for now, stay well, everybody. Do not give up the fight. Do not give hope. Christ and the Father is with us. God bless everybody, and goodbye.